Am I dreaming? No. I've been transmigrated into the body of a scumbag man who used his disciple as a doormat. And in 10 years, she'll become my downfall. I need to win her over before it's too late. But wait a second. The system wants me to be a villain. The story begins with a man imprisoned and surrounded by various monsters. The man, who seemed to be slightly injured, cried out for help as the beasts drew even closer to him. Suddenly, amidst the thunderstorm, a woman appeared. Seeing the figure flying through the sky, the man screamed desperately for help. The woman, who looked like an angel, activated her magic and, with a cynical smile on her face, struck a direct blow at the man. She leaned in close to his ear and said it had been a long time since she last saw him. Stepping on the man, she called him master and declared that his disciple was here. Then she simply said, "You're welcome." Right after that, she delivered another fatal blow to her master. At that moment, the man thought everything was over. However, he began to remember that he was originally the young master of the Su family in the realm of the immortal gods. He was a child of destiny, admired by thousands. He had conspired with the sacred maiden of the demonic abyss and betrayed the divine realm, becoming a hunted man. He fled to the lower realm, hid within the immortal Sword Cloud sect, and became a carefree elder. The man found all of this very strange, as those memories didn't seem to be his. Even so, he felt it didn't matter anymore, since he wasn't even sure if he would survive. Then, he suddenly woke up. He quickly sat up, realizing he was truly alive. Looking at his own hands, he tried to understand what had happened. That's when he realized he had transmigrated. Not only was he in a new body, but he also possessed the original owner's memories for the next 10 years. At that moment, a woman appeared, calling him Master. She asked if he'd had a nightmare and offered to wipe his sweat. Upon seeing the woman's face, the man recognized Feng Wanqing, the empress who, within 10 years, would become cruel and ruthless, destroying the entire world. Now, he realized she was his disciple. He quickly refused her help. Feng Wanqing asked if she had done something wrong. Based on the original body's memories, the man knew that Chang treated Feng Wanqing merely as a cultivation cauldron. When the time came, Chang would use the dual cultivation method to absorb all her power. Until then, Feng Wanqing had to remain pure. For that reason, Chang was extremely opposed to her having any contact with other men. On that very day, the original owner of the body had found Feng Wanqing learning skills from an elder brother of another sect. Consumed by rage, he had punished her harshly. Observing the poor girl's injuries, the man thought about how pitiful she truly was. Suddenly, a small fairy appeared before the protagonist. This was the system, which had been awakened because the host had felt empathy for the girl. However, as the host of the scumbag system, the protagonist was strictly forbidden from feeling pity for Feng Wanqing. A mission then appeared, stating that Feng Wanqing had made a mistake and that the host had to punish her within 3 minutes. The reward for completing the mission would be 100 system points and 10 advancement pills. The penalty, if he failed, would be the loss of 10 points, a drop of 2 cultivation levels, and physical castration. A warning message popped up, informing that the host's initial points were 100, and if the points reached 0, the system would automatically be unbound, and the host would die. The protagonist, confused, asked what kind of system this was, since it was forcing him to become some kind of cruel and overpowered villain. He also questioned what the hell physical castration even meant. He went on grumbling that the damn system had no conscience. At that moment, Feng Wanqing tried to say something to her master, but the protagonist was only thinking that, despite being the disciple of a distinguished elder, Feng Wanqing had a very low cultivation. She was only in the early stage of qi refinement. Moreover, she had no techniques, and her martial arts skills were useless. The protagonist concluded that the previous owner of that body hadn't taught her anything. The system reappeared, warning that the mission timer was running out. Annoyed, the protagonist complained that the system was too noisy and told it to shut up. Without realizing it, he struck Feng Wanqing with a blow, sending her flying to the other side of the room. Feng Wanqing fell to the ground, and the protagonist, coldly, said that since a mistake had been made, a punishment must be applied. He then threw a technique manual toward the fallen girl. He continued, saying that Feng Wanqing had secretly consulted an elder brother from another sect to learn the martial arts of the disciplinary hall in secret. Therefore, her punishment would be to copy that celestial-level technique, highly valued by her master for years, 10 times. Upon picking up the book, Feng Wanqing was startled to recall that the entire Jianyun immortal sect possessed only 2 celestial-level techniques, and now her master was actually letting her copy one of them. She wondered if this was really a punishment. The protagonist then stood up and said that, if she understood, she should leave now. The system message popped up, informing that the punishment mission had been successfully completed. In addition to the promised reward, the protagonist had also received a card that allowed him to emit a powerful aura for 1 hour, limited to once per day. Irritated, the protagonist turned away, thinking that by using a bug in the system, he had managed to outsmart it. A few minutes later, outside Su Cheng's quarters, Feng was about to leave. She thanked her master for the punishment and the reward. She also thought that the palm strike her master had given her had forced the stagnant blood in her body to circulate, and not only were her old wounds healed, but her meridians had been purified. She felt that soon she would be able to reach the 9th stage of qi refinement and advance to the foundation establishment stage. Feng Wanqing looked back, believing that her master would be acting differently toward her. But when she turned around completely, she realized he was no longer standing there. Even so, Feng Wanqing believed that, in truth, her master was secretly helping her. Clutching the technique book, Feng Wanqing felt touched and silently thanked her master for it. The protagonist, who was hiding behind the wall, received a message from the system, informing him that he had gained 10 affinity points with Feng Wanqing. Along with that, he also gained 10 system points. At that moment, he realized that by increasing someone's favorability, he also earned system points. He then decided to check his favorability level with Feng Wanqing and saw that it was in the negatives. The protagonist called Su Cheng a tremendous bastard. The system appeared and announced that the main story mission had been activated. One of the missions was to help Feng Wanqing fall into darkness. The protagonist questioned whether this wasn't the same path the previous owner of that body had followed. Seeing that the system only pretended not to understand, the protagonist became irritated and said that if Feng Wanqing fell into darkness, he would be dragged down with her as well. "Damn dog system," he muttered. Suddenly the protagonist felt the barrier of the mountain basement wavering. He quickly got ready, believing someone had invaded the place. A figure appeared, passing through. It was a woman asking for help from the Cloud Sword sect. The protagonist appeared before her, asking what she was doing there and why she had invaded the sect. That woman was Zueliuli, chief disciple of the Snow family from the northern forest. Zueliuli threw herself onto the protagonist and, with a sweet gaze, asked him to save her. The protagonist thinks, at that moment, that judging by Zueliuli's appearance, it seems she has been affected by some kind of enchanted poison. Now, he must seal her meridians to prevent the poison from spreading. So, he places his fingers on the young woman's shoulder. With that movement, she loses consciousness, and upon observing her, the protagonist believes she has been seriously hurt. He decides to take her back first, as she needs to wake up before anything else can be done. At that moment, someone was watching Su Cheng from afar. It was one of the elders of the Sword Cloud Immortal sect, Bai Yuchen, who referred to the protagonist as a reckless and flirtatious scoundrel. Some time passed, and Su Cheng was taking care of the girl's recovery. He calls upon the system and asks for information about Zueliuli. The description that appears informs him that she will become the future secret lover of the male lead, Ye Feng, in this world, and that he will sacrifice himself to save her in the ancient secret realm opened by the eternal immortal dynasty. The protagonist becomes curious about who this so-called male lead Ye Feng is, and begins to wonder if he might have stumbled upon Ye Feng's secret harem. At that moment, Xueliuli's body reacts. She realizes that the poison in her body has completely disappeared. Excited, Xueliuli thanks the protagonist for saving her, saying that she will surely repay him in the future. The protagonist stands up and says she doesn't need to be so formal. Xueliuli then thinks that an elder of the sect, handsome, young and strong, wouldn't be a bad choice for dual cultivation and detoxifying her body. She quickly gets excited by the idea and tries to control herself, while the protagonist observes her, unaware of her intentions. Suddenly, a message from the system appears, informing him that the host has gained 30 favorability points with Xueliuli. He wonders if it's really that easy. Xiaoliuli says she fears that her presence there might cause trouble for his sect, and once again thanks him for his kindness, promising to repay it in the future. The protagonist feels a bit awkward with the situation, and replies that it's all right. Then he wonders why the atmosphere suddenly became so strange and awkward. Suddenly, a loud rumble is heard, and a sinister voice emerges, asking how the insignificant scum of the Sword Cloud Immortal sect dares to hide someone who belongs to him. Xueliuli panics and says that he is there. The protagonist's disciples begin to shout, saying that this is the aura of the ghost sect, and they wonder how those guys managed to infiltrate the Sword Cloud sect. They go on to say that this is the ancestor, known for being fierce and cruel, with a notorious reputation across the 5 major regions. Xueliuli was hiding behind Su Chang. A disciple steps forward and declares that this ghost sect ancestor has annihilated countless sects. That horrifying creature keeps speaking, saying that if they don't hand over the person who belongs to him today, then they shouldn't blame him for destroying the entire sect. This demonic ancestor had a rather flamboyant appearance and was already at the mid-stage of the soul formation realm. A new mission is unlocked. The protagonist must help Xueliuli defeat the ghost ancestor. By doing so, he will earn reward points, and the more stylish his actions, the more points he will receive. At that moment, 3 lights appear in the sky, and voices shout for the ghost ancestor not to be so arrogant. The people who appeared were Bai Yunchen and Zhao Yunchen. They state that they have never interfered with the ghost sect, and therefore, the ghost elder has no right to interfere with the Sword Cloud sect. Zhou Yuan, the Grand Elder, was also with them, and asks when exactly someone from their sect hid someone from the ghost sect. The ghost ancestor then points at Xueliuli and says that he likes her, therefore she now belongs to him. He demands that they hand her over immediately, or he will exterminate the entire Sword Cloud sect. Bai shouts, calling the old rag a trespasser, and orders him to leave at once and not to flaunt his power there. Zhao, worried, asks Bai not to provoke him, as they may not be able to defeat him. He suggests simply handing over the person and ending it quickly. Bai, irritated, tells Zhao to shut up and calls him a coward. Zhao just asks her not to be angry. The ghost ancestor then says he likes Bai as well, calling both her and Xueliuli to become his dual cultivation partners. If they satisfy him, he might spare the sect. Upon hearing that, Bai becomes completely enraged and calls the ancestor an old bastard. She declares that the Bai family has a supreme expert, and if anything happens to her, the family will hunt the ghost ancestor down to the depths of hell. Zhao tries to plead with Bai not to be so impulsive. Shuo, witnessing all the commotion, tells Su Chang that the ghost ancestor is extremely powerful and that no one in the sect is a match for him. Feeling guilty, she declares that she will go with him. The protagonist thinks to himself that, at that moment, his cultivation is being suppressed and he cannot fight at full strength. He remembers that there is a bloodline seal within him, placed by a supreme expert of the Su family from the divine realm. This seal hides his aura, allowing him to avoid detection and pursuit by beings from the immortal divine realm. The cost of this is that his cultivation level has been suppressed by 2 realms. But Su Chang remembers that he has something. He steps in front of Shui Liuli and says that if he saved her only to let her die again, how would the world view the immortal Sword Cloud sect? The protagonist continues, stating that his sect is under the protection of powerful cultivators, and that a mere expert of the soul formation realm is nothing to fear. The ghost ancestor declares that everyone in the immortal Sword Cloud sect is a bunch of reckless and blind fools, as a mere nascent soul dares to play the hero and try to save a beauty. With an even more terrifying aura, the ghost ancestor states that he specializes in dealing with arrogant fools. He charges toward the protagonist, who quickly pulls out his aura card, obtained earlier from the system. Su Chang activates the card swiftly, and a powerful aura bursts forth around him. The protagonist asks if the ghost ancestor truly thinks he can face him. At that moment, a massive bolt of lightning crosses the sky, and a divine figure appears above the ghost ancestor, who is stunned by the strength of the aura. The 3 elders are utterly terrified upon realizing that the entity is above the soul formation realm. The divine and powerful figure grabs the ghost ancestor, looks him directly in the eyes, and says that he wants to see something that day. He shouts, asking who dares to touch the immortal Sword Cloud sect. The ghost ancestor declares that the protagonist's sect has no martial ethics, as it truly is protected by a supreme expert. The protagonist watches the scene with confidence, while Shui Liuli looks at him, slightly frightened. Bai is surprised to see that a supreme expert is protecting the sect. Zhao is also astonished by this new information. Zhou Yuan wonders if this protection had been deliberately arranged by the sect master while he is away. At that moment, the ghost ancestor begins pulling in all the air around him and then uses all his strength to break free. He thinks that just managing to free himself has already cost him most of his spiritual energy, and concludes that he is no match for dealing with that creature. Faced with this, he kneels before the divine entity and says that he was very disrespectful. He admits he did not know that the Sword Cloud Immortal sect had such a powerful expert protecting it. He goes on to say that he was reckless, for with that lord present, he would never dare attack the sect. The old man then looks toward Shui and declares that his only objective is to retrieve an item of his. He then quickly turns and claims that the person is not a disciple of the Sword Cloud Immortal sect, hoping that the lord will allow his departure. However, the protagonist steps in front of Shui and warns the ghost ancestor not to act so recklessly. Zhao, pouting, comments that Su Chang sure knows how to show off at the right time. With the supreme expert present, the ghost ancestor would never dare to be reckless. He just needed to show up and do his little performance. The ghost ancestor, irritated, prepares an attack and shouts that a mere half-baked cultivator dares to try to stop him. Just as he is about to strike the protagonist, a shield appears in front of him. Su Chang smiles and says he was merely giving the old man a chance, concluding that the old man is truly useless. The saint who protects the protagonist's sect activates his power and launches a powerful flame attack toward the strange old man, hitting him directly and completely incinerating him. The saint approaches the protagonist and declares that His Highness is suppressing his cultivation level and that he is at his disposal. The protagonist simply thanks him and tells the saint that he may take his leave. Zhao, upon witnessing the scene, is shocked to see that the supreme expert actually bowed to the protagonist. Nervous, he smiles and comments that Su Chang is truly impressive and not an ordinary person. Bai remarks that, in fact, he still prefers the rebellious version of Su Chang from the past. The old ghost ancestor, collapsed on the ground, declares that he was blind and failed to recognize Su Chang's greatness, and because of that, he offended him. He then begs for his life, promising that from now on, the ghost sect will be entirely at his feet, obeying his every command. The protagonist, however, orders the old man to leave. The ghost ancestor quickly gets up, frightened, and thanks the protagonist. However, as he is running away, The protagonist prepares an attack, and with a precise lightning strike, Chang eliminates the ghost ancestor in one blow. He says that the members of the ghost sect have committed many crimes and show no respect for human life, and concludes by saying that those bastards dared to think they could serve him. Zhao gets excited and praises the protagonist, beginning to flatter him. Bai doesn't hold back and reminds Zhao that he had called the protagonist a show-off. Bai continues recounting everything Zhao used to say behind the protagonist's back, and the two begin to argue. Meanwhile, Feng Wanqing observes everything from afar, relieved and very proud that her master has reached such a realm. She then wonders if she will ever be able to catch up to her master. At that moment, the system appears, congratulating the protagonist for completing the mission. Since Shu's favorability increased by 30 points, her current favorability is now 75. She is emotionally involved with the host, which directly affects her relationship with the male protagonist, Feng. Upon reading this, the protagonist remembers that, in a few days, a competition between sects will be held, and Feng, along with other important characters, will be present. Realizing that his disciple Feng Wanqing is still at a very low level, he sees that he needs to think of something to change that. The next day, the protagonist and Feng Wanqing were walking around. She asked what the master wanted to talk to her about. Chang explained that he had a friend from the demon clan who, to avoid any trouble, was hiding in that place. The protagonist went on to say that he brought Feng Wanqing there so that his friend could help her advance in her cultivation. Looking around, he wondered where she was. At that moment, a movement stirred in the water, and a girl scooped some water with her mouth and splashed it toward the protagonist. Chang then asked if that was supposed to be funny. She was a snake girl who smiled excitedly upon seeing her old friend again. She said that if Chang stayed with her, he would become the Dragon King. The protagonist replied that he didn't care about becoming a Dragon King since it was obvious she was a snake. The girl called him silly and claimed she was a great dragon. Chang then got straight to the point. Pointing to Feng, he said he was there for another reason. He explained that the Grand Sect competition was approaching, but his disciple's cultivation level was still too low, and the martial arts techniques and skills she had just learned were not professional. The protagonist asked Sister Yaolan if she happened to have a divine body refining technique from the Demon Dragon clan, and said he hoped Yaolan could teach it to Feng. Yaolan observed the two silently for a moment and commented that she hadn't expected Chang to like that type of girl. Then, she emerged from the water, completely changing her appearance, and said that once she reached the Supreme Realm, she would be able to transform into a human form, and at that point, she wouldn't lose to the sister standing before her. Yaolan threw herself onto the protagonist and asked if she could do whatever she wanted. Chang asked her not to joke around and said they would talk about it later. A system message appeared with a side mission. Reach 80 points with Yaolan, and also help her reach the Supreme Realm, in order to extract her dragon bone. Seeing this, the protagonist remarked that this damn system never did anything for people's good. He remembered that in his previous life, the only person Yaolan trusted was Chang, but that scoundrel's goal was only to get her dragon bone. He ambushed her while she was leveling up, forcing her to give it up. The protagonist then ran off, saying he would leave his little disciple with Sister Yaolan, and asked Feng to listen to everything she had to say. Feng was startled by the protagonist's sudden departure. Yaolan grabbed Feng's arm and told her to stop. Feng asked what Yaolan was planning to do. Yaolan replied that since Feng's master had left her in her care, she should obey everything Yaolan said. Otherwise, as a weakling, she'd be left behind by her master. Then, Yaolan told Feng to take off her clothes, saying it would be better that way to absorb the essence of demon dragon blood and refine her body. Yaolan assured her she wasn't a man, and that Feng didn't need to worry about her purity. Even though she was embarrassed, Feng thought about her master and began to obey Yaolan just for his sake. She believed she would become strong because of him. And so, the two began to practice their secret cultivation techniques. A few days later, On the day of the grand competition of the immortal Sword Cloud sect, some cultivating disciples were preparing for the duels. Zhao, seeing the crowd, remarked that many people had indeed come to watch the sect's internal competition. He went on to say that it was an unprecedented spectacle, unlike anything seen before. Zhou Yuan commented that, with the emergence of the supreme expert, forces from all sides had mobilized upon hearing the news. Now, everyone was there because of Elder Su, and the rest just wanted to bask in the glory. At that moment, the three great families of the northern wild region were also present. Xue was calling for her father, asking him to follow her. The heads of the families had come in person this time, leaving everyone impressed. Shuiliuli's father said that his daughter was lucky to have made a connection with the supreme elder of the Sword Cloud sect. Moreover, it was said that this elder possessed a high level of cultivation. Then, he asked when Shuiliuli would introduce Su Chang to him. Embarrassed, Xue asked her father not to speak so recklessly. Suddenly, a commotion began. The Demon Slayer Alliance had arrived as well. The vice leader of the alliance, Wei Kun, was present in person. However, among all those people, a mysterious man watched everything in silence. He commented that it had been a long time since he last saw Shuiliuli. Sometime later, the annual competition of the Immortal Sword Cloud sect began. The disciples faced off in the central arena. Feng Wanqing was also there, fighting bravely and winning her first match. And so they reached the final battle between Feng Wanqing and Li Yue. The protagonist, watching the fight's preparation, thought that after being refined by Yao Lan, Feng Wanqing's potential had been stimulated to a certain degree. Therefore, it was no surprise that she had reached the finals. After all, she was destined to become the Empress in the future. Li Yue smiled and commented that he and Feng were meeting again. Then he asked whether what he had taught her back then had been helpful. He continued, saying that if it hadn't been for his guidance, she would have been eliminated in the first round. Feng, uncomfortable, remained silent while listening to all of that. Then she remembered that Li Yue had only taken advantage of the situation back then to exploit her. The man approached Feng and said that she should just give up, as she was no match for him in terms of strength. He asked why they didn't meet in a more secluded place that night, claiming he would teach her some deeper techniques. He added that he guaranteed she would feel ecstatic. At that moment, Feng stared at him, drew her sword, and charged at the man, landing a strike on his face. Li Yue brought his hand to his face, incredulous at Feng's attitude. He countered, saying she had the audacity to attack his handsome face. Feng shouted, telling him to stop with that nonsense. Wei Kun, who was watching the fight, sensed a familiar demonic scent coming from Feng Wanqing. Even if it was faint, he wouldn't be fooled. The protagonist then thought that Feng Wanqing's scent had reached that idiot's nose, and wondered if this would mark the beginning of her descent into darkness. Zhou Yuan commented that Feng had been a very discreet disciple before, but in just a few days had shown incredible progress. He concluded by saying it seemed that Elder Su had put a lot of effort into her. Bai simply shrugged at this. Feng continued her frantic fight against her senior brother. Li Yue wondered how that girl had improved her cultivation level so much in such a short time. He didn't want to lose to her, because if that happened, he wouldn't be able to show his face again. So, he prepared an item in his hand and attacked Feng directly. Feng used her sword to defend herself but noticed that Li Yue was hiding something in his other hand. She wondered if it was a weapon. The man prepared for another sudden attack, but Feng managed to strike the small blade, shattering it into several pieces. Taking advantage of a gap in Feng's defense, Li Yue lunged forward with his sword, shouting that she was finished. However, Feng managed to dodge at the last second, and landed a direct kick to the lower parts of that cursed man. Then, she quickly jumped back while Li Yue collapsed to the ground like a sack of potatoes. People around them commented on the scene, saying such an action could harm the future of their fellow disciple. The discussion started turning against Feng for having made such a questionable move. However, despite the controversy, Feng Wanqing was declared the champion of that year's competition. Feng only thought that she had finally not disappointed her master. The protagonist, looking at her, said, "Not bad at all." But at that moment, a storm began to form in the sky, leaving the protagonist very confused. A giant dragon started to emerge from within the storm. A voice echoed, laughing intensely, saying that the immortal Sword Cloud sect had disciples who used underhanded tactics and dirty moves, and that it was all very entertaining. The voice continued, commenting on the large number of people gathered, and then asked if they were all there to welcome him. Zhao, terrified, said that the demonic aura might belong to the crown prince of the demon clan, Mo Daotian. Zhou Yuan asked why such a person would be coming there. Xue Liuli's father said that this man held the third position on the Heaven and Earth demon list, a truly ruthless being against whom there was no chance of victory. Another sect leader questioned what was going on. That mysterious individual from before appeared again, surrounded by a dark aura. In that moment, he thought that the one he had been waiting for had finally arrived. The immense dragon was still forming in the sky, and a humanoid figure appeared on its head. This man declared that the grand sect competition was happening that day, and that he was sure there would be great prizes. As crown prince, he was quite interested, and then asked what he should do next. Zhao, somewhat confident, tells everyone not to fear, for the sect has a protective barrier, and the enemy will not be able to breach it. However, the young demon lord Mo Daotian simply passes through the barrier with ease, leaving Zhao completely shocked. Mo Daotian smiles and comments that the barrier is very weak. It's a joke. Like a black lightning bolt, Mo Daotian descends from the sky in front of Feng Wanqing, who watches in fright, trying to comprehend what has just happened. Then the demon begins a 10-second countdown and orders the irrelevant people to get out of there quickly. A system message appears for the protagonist. It is the notification of a new mission, asking him to prevent the young demon's entry into the sect and defeat him in front of everyone. Upon reading this, Su Chang complains that that damn system is causing trouble again. Mo Daotian, in a measured tone, states that time is running out. People begin to run in panic, trying to escape as fast as possible. Zhou Yuan turns to the protagonist and asks him to activate the sect's grand formation, because even with few people and many elders, they could still fight that opponent. Su Chang simply replies that they cannot. Irritated, Zhao asks what he means by that. Zhou Yuan tries to control the situation and ends up agreeing with Su Chang. Meanwhile, Mo Daotian turns to Feng Wanqing. He notices something different about that girl. She has the aura of a unique bloodline, uncommon. If well nurtured, she could bring great surprises in the future. Mo Daotian approaches Feng Wanqing and remarks that her methods are very much in line with his demon clan style, and that it would be a waste to leave her there. Then he asks Feng if she wouldn't like to go with him to the demon clan, for she could become the next celestial demoness. Feng is frightened by the sudden proposal but responds that the demon prince is very ugly and that she refuses. Mo Daotian, annoyed, declares that he is the crown prince and clearly the most handsome in the demon realm. He questions whether Feng's brain is functioning or if she is blind, and adds that she will regret this one day. However, he finishes by saying that it doesn't matter, because once he destroys the entire sect, she will certainly go with him. After all, the crown prince gave her a chance. Mo Daotian then asks if Feng would like to serve him for 3 years as his personal maid and wants to know what she thinks about that. Nervously, Zhao comments that serving 3 years as a servant isn't such a bad offer, because besides escaping destruction at that moment, they could infiltrate and learn more about the enemy's territory, gaining knowledge for future battles and ensuring they would never be defeated again. Bai, once again, calls Zhao a coward and says that since he wants so much to be a servant, she will do it herself for him. But at that moment, the protagonist appears, asking for permission and noting that his disciple doesn't seem very interested in Mo Daotian's demonic clan. He concludes by saying that it would be better for the prince to leave. Feng Wanqing grows very excited to see her master arrive at that instant. Mo Daotian then prepares an attack, belittling the protagonist by calling him a mere sect elder who dares to provoke a crown prince. He unleashes a dragon strength strike aimed at Su Chang. However, the protagonist, smiling, raises his fingers, casts a spell, and declares that he wants to see if the crown prince can withstand it. At that moment, the swords of the disciples and everyone nearby begin to be seized by an invisible force, and they position themselves before the protagonist. Su Chang sends them flying toward Mo Daotian, who starts laughing, saying it was a clever trick. He manages to defend against the attacks and, sneering, remarks that the protagonist needs more training to challenge him. for at Su Chang's current level, it was a great joke. Yet Su Chang suddenly appears behind the demonic prince and says that viewing everything only from the kingdom's perspective will blind him. Startled, Mo Daotian wonders how Su Chang got there. Once again, the protagonist readies an attack, thinking that although his cultivation is suppressed, the technique he uses is of divine grade, capable of refining ordinary spiritual energy within the body into something much more potent. He launches the strike at Mo Daotian, who, upon impact, is thrown to the ground. The crown prince tries to stand but is struck again by Su Chang, who prevents him from rising. The protagonist then tells Mo Daotian not to move, for he might hurt himself. He also asks the prince to take a deep breath, commenting that feeling dizzy is normal at that point. At that instant, the system message appears, informing that the host has successfully completed the mission. Meanwhile, the young demonic master begins to complain, saying the protagonist deceived him and that Su Chang does not follow martial virtues. The disciples and onlookers are utterly shocked to see the protagonist handling the demonic crown prince with such ease. Once more, that mysterious man appears, saying that the Sword Cloud sect truly has someone so powerful. The crown prince thrashes on the ground like a spoiled child, begging the protagonist to let him go and settle matters fairly. Su Chang simply frees him and accepts the agreement. Mo Daotian quickly stands up, complaining that all his clothes are torn and declaring he will not fight anymore that day. He concludes by saying that if the Sword Cloud sect offers 2 celestial-level techniques as compensation, he will pretend that nothing happened. Su Chang laughs and asks if this is some attempt to relieve the shame Mo Daotian just suffered. The prince responds that his battle attire is a rare fashion piece, handcrafted by a famous regional artisan, so offering 2 celestial techniques would be a very generous offer. Suddenly, the mysterious man appears behind Mo Daotian and throws 2 chains toward the prince. Su Chang is left speechless at the sight, while Yuan, Zhao, and Bai are equally stunned. Mo Daotian tries to turn and asks who the bastard was, who attacked him sneakily. Seeing the figure before him, Su Chang thinks he's finally arrived. The male protagonist established in that world. The formidable rival of the protagonist. The blue dragon heaven's chosen of the sacred land, Feng. Mo Daotian says that one thing is not being able to defeat Su Chang, but that bastard actually thinks anyone can come and attack him. Feng merely remarks that the prince is making too much noise. He then yanks hard on the chains, dragging Mo Daotian with him, and delivers a kick to the demonic prince, who falls to the ground awkwardly. At that moment, Feng begins to remove the cloak that covered his face, revealing his presence to everyone there. Yuan is startled to see Feng, as is Xue Liuli's father, who recognizes him as the candidate for Holy Son of the Azure Dragon Sacred Land. He then asks how Feng could be in that place. Bai and Zhao bow to Holy Son Feng, and the heads of the great families also bow, greeting the male protagonist of that world. Feng thanks everyone for their cordiality. Zhao steps forward and says that if they had known the Holy Son was present, they wouldn't be in such a lamentable state. Then Zhao asks what brought the Holy Son there. Feng replies that this is a task from the annual evaluation of the Holy Son of the Sacred Land, and that Mo Daotian is the target. He explains that he is there to capture him. Suddenly, a great dragon appears over Feng, but with just 2 fingers, he launches a powerful attack at the creature, which quickly turns into a fried snake. Feng approaches the demonic crown prince, who is still lying on the ground, very frightened. He draws his sword and comments that maybe taking off just the head would be faster. The crown prince, desperate, begs Feng to wait a moment, claiming that his head is very heavy and that, if it's with Feng, it will be quicker. At that moment, something is hurled toward Feng, causing him to drop his sword. Feng turns and asks what Su Chang is thinking. He reflects that anyone who can disarm him with a stone must indeed be very powerful. Our protagonist, ironically, simply apologizes and adds that he cannot let Mo Daotian die on Sword Cloud sect territory, because otherwise, if the demon clan comes for vengeance in the future, the sect will have many problems. A mission prompt appears for Su Chang, asking him to save Mo Daotian and thwart Holy Son Feng's task. After reflecting for a moment, Feng agrees with Su Chang and admits he hadn't considered that point before. Mo Daotian, analyzing the whole situation, believes that if he stays there, Ye Feng won't be able to do anything against him. So, with eyes shining, he says he understands everything now. He turns to Ye Feng and declares that, if he hadn't already been somewhat wounded, he would certainly have taken care of this so-called holy son of the Blue Dragon. Ye Feng turns to Mo Daotian, clearly displeased by what he's just heard. Mo Daotian, using all his talent for acting and drama, begins to warn that if Ye Feng so much as lays a hand on him again, he will die on the spot. Along with his beloved dragon, Little Black, he adds that as soon as the demon clan finds out, no one present will survive. Ye Feng then states that he will spare Mo Daotian for the time being, but will act as soon as he leaves the Cloud Sword sect. Next, Ye Feng turns toward where Feng was standing and says there is one more thing that needs explaining. Pointing his sword at Feng Wanqing, he asks why she is exuding the aura of the demon clan. Yuan and Zhao are startled by the accusation and ask if it might be a misunderstanding. Wei Kun appears again and says that the Holy Sun is right, for that girl can deceive everyone except the Demon Hunters Alliance. He continues, asserting that Feng Wanqing possesses the demon clan's aura and must be eliminated today. Those around begin to comment, saying they never would have imagined that the Demon Hunters sect would confront the Cloud Sword sect. But since they are ruthless, they believe that Disciple must indeed be in trouble. Soon, the remarks turn into harsh judgments of the poor girl, labeling her a demon and hurling other pejoratives. Wei Kun draws his sword and declares that, as vice leader of the Demon Hunters Alliance, he will deliver justice on behalf of heaven. At that moment, Chang activates the system and asks if taking action now will interrupt Feng Wanqing's fall into darkness. The system responds that helping the female protagonist Feng Wanqing embrace evil is one of the main missions. Therefore, it advises the host to step back and mind his own life. However, the protagonist declares that he is actually helping Feng gain confidence, so that in the future he can destroy her and drag her even deeper into darkness. The system then rejoices, saying the host is truly clever and evil, and concludes that this idea is brilliant. The protagonist, at that moment, thinks to himself that the system is very stupid and brainless. Just then, someone steps in front of Wei Kun's blade. It is Mo Daotian, who asks if anyone present wants to risk death for what was done to the Master Su's disciple. Mo Daotian turns to the protagonist, expecting some sign of approval for his actions, but the protagonist merely watches in silence. Wei Kun remarks that Elder Su has not spoken up, then asks Mo Daotian not to cause any more trouble. At that moment, Chang appears behind Wei Kun. Feng Wanqing is moved to see her beloved master there. The protagonist lays his hand on Wei Kun's head and asks, since when anyone can lecture his disciple. Wei Jun turns to the protagonist and says that he might have misunderstood. Chang simply changes his attitude and admits that, in fact, it was all his fault. Because yesterday, while he was cultivating, he refined a drop of demonic dragon blood essence for Feng Wanqing, which caused the misunderstanding. Suddenly Mo Daotian comes running, grabbing Wei Kun, and says that without fully understanding the situation, Wei Kun acted against Master Su's disciple, and must therefore be punished. Mo Daotian, shaking Wei Kun like a rag doll, starts laughing, saying he finally found someone he can defeat. Meanwhile, Wei Kun cries for help, as he's being used as a punching bag. Ye Feng turns to the protagonist and says that, since this was all just a misunderstanding, everyone should shake hands and make peace. He then asks Chang to do it as a favor. The protagonist smiles and says that since the Holy Sun requested it, everyone will listen. Chang then turns to the demonic crown prince and asks him to calm down, as it's better not to disturb the peace. Mo Daotian throws Wei Kun back to his disciples, who, in desperation, try to help their vice leader. They say their farewells to the protagonist while Wei Kun is carried off, vowing to repay all of this. After the confusion ends, Yuan begins to say that now that everything has been cleared up, there's nothing more to worry about. He concludes by stating that the Sword Cloud sect will ensure everyone is treated with the utmost hospitality. At that moment, Ye Feng observes Hui Liuli. He approaches her and greets Hui's father. The old man thanks the young holy son for his kindness and asks if he is truly worthy of such a title. Ye Feng asks if Patriarch Shui remembers saving a gravely injured young man a few years ago, and then reveals that it was him. Ye Feng goes on to say that at the time, he was undergoing training and couldn't use his real appearance or name, so he understands why the Patriarch didn't recognize him. The old man begins to laugh, and says that the Shui family was fortunate to have helped the Holy Sun. The other masters of powerful families begin to whisper about the Shui family establishing a connection with the Holy Sun, something many of them didn't take well. Ye Feng then turns to Zui Liuli and says it's been a long time. However, the girl was looking in another direction, toward the protagonist, who was talking to Mo Daotian about what had just happened. Ye Feng notices this, looks at the protagonist, and wonders if he is the one Zui Liuli has feelings for. Zui Liuli's father asks how she could be so rude, as the Holy Sun was speaking to her. Zui Liuli quickly responds that it was just a small favor and that the Holy Sun doesn't need to worry about it. Ye Feng feels a bit sad at that moment, wondering if she has simply forgotten him. Zui Liuli's father becomes completely embarrassed and asks the Holy Sun not to take it the wrong way. Zui Liuli quickly walks away, saying she has some matters to take care of. She takes Su Chang's hand, hugs him, and invites the protagonist to meet her father. The protagonist is momentarily surprised, while Ye Feng becomes completely irritated with Su Chang. Sometime later, in the tea hall, the protagonist asks why the head of the Shu family requested to meet with him alone. At that moment, Patriarch Shui thinks that his daughter Liuli has special regard for Su Chang, and since she offended the Holy Sun, they cannot afford to lose Su Chang's support as well. The old Shui then begins to say that he will be frank with Su Chang. After his daughter was saved by the protagonist from poisoning and from the Ghost Clan, Liuli refuses to return home and instead summoned him there. Patriarch Shui believes that Liuli's feelings towards Su Chang are clear. So, if Elder Su is also interested, Liuli's father is willing to let her stay there and serve Su Chang. However, the old man says he has only one request. He hopes for an opportunity to ascend to the Supreme Realm, like Elder Su. The protagonist had his eyes closed, seemingly dozing off, without saying a single word. Meanwhile, on the other side of the mountain, Feng was walking through the sex garden. She was happy, thinking she had truly won first place in the grand competition. Now, she needed to tell Sister Yaolin in person and thank her. However, Feng Wanqing comes across Ye Feng standing in front of her. She wonders why that guy hasn't left yet, since the previous matter had already been settled by the master. Ye Feng tells Feng Wanqing not to worry, as he is not there to cause her trouble. Feng Wanqing replies that, in that case, she has nothing to say to the Holy Sun, and asks to excuse herself. But Ye Feng puts his arm in front of her and asks if she has ever wondered why, despite her master being so powerful, he chose someone like her, so weak in cultivation, to be his disciple. Ye Feng continues, saying that Feng Wanqing possesses the phoenix body of the Nether Emperor from the ancient eras, carrying a trace of the bloodline of the 9 Empresses of Hell. When that bloodline awakens, not even the greatest disciples of the divine realm will be able to compare to that power. And, at the time of change, Su Chang will take the opportunity to confirm the bloodline and destroy her emperor's body, ensuring that no one else can defeat him. Ye Feng then raises his hand toward Feng Wanqing and invites her to go with him to the sacred land of the Azure Dragon, claiming he can help her awaken the bloodline within her. He finishes by swearing, in the name of the Holy Son of the Azure Dragon from the sacred land, that he will not betray her trust. Feng Wanqing responds that she thought the Holy Sun would be exceptional and wise, but didn't expect that Ye Feng would have his foolish moments. She continues, saying that he really thought she would believe something told by someone she met in passing, rather than trust her master whom she has known for years. Feng Wanqing states that Ye Feng's plan to sow discord is far from intelligent, pushes his hand away, and bids him a quick farewell. Ye Feng lowers his head, saying that Feng Wanqing rejected his proposal. At that moment, a distorted figure appears, saying it had already warned that Ye Feng could have simply taken Feng Wanqing away, but he insisted on maintaining the reputation of the sacred land of the Azure Dragon. The creature goes on, claiming that people like Ye Feng think too highly of themselves and are very troublesome. Annoyed, Ye Feng simply tells the creature to be quiet. Meanwhile, Su Chang was standing at the entrance of the hall while Shui Liuli was walking up the stairs. She asked the protagonist what her father had said to him. Su Chang replied that her father had sold her to him. As the protagonist gently patted the girl's head, he asked what Xue Liuli thought they should do. The girl, a little shy, lowered her head and said that, if that was how things were, she would stay by his side and would no longer go anywhere else. Xue Liuli stepped even closer to the protagonist and stated that, ever since Elder Su had saved her, she felt in her heart that she belonged to him. The system appeared, announcing that Xue Liuli's favorability with a protagonist had surpassed 80. As a result, he received a reward for having completely destroyed the relationship between Xue Liuli and Ye Feng. Feeling a bit awkward, the protagonist thought that if Ye Feng wanted to blame someone, he should blame him. Or that damn system. Sometime later, on the other side of the mountain, a creature was telling Feng Wanqing to stop running and come with them to the sacred land of the dragon. It continued, claiming to be a fragment of an ancient divine weapon that had traversed the heavens and the earth for 3,000 years, but had never found a physique and bloodline so defiant of the heavens as Feng Wanqing's. The creature was about to reach her and said that if she came with them, they would ensure that she would rule the world in the future. Desperate, Feng Wanqing begged that thing to stay away from her. Seeing her refusal, the creature raised its hand and declared that it would have to use force. Feng Wanqing was surrounded by the evil spiritual energy emanating from the creature. She tried to resist at all costs, but at that moment, something caught the attention of the supernatural being. It was Mo Dao Tian, who had arrived and said that not even Ye Feng had dared to lay a hand on Su Chang's disciple, and that the ugly creature was very bold. The creature replied that the boy was indeed reckless, then withdrew, saying it would leave that matter to Ye Feng. Ye Feng told Mo Daotian that he had given him time to recover, but the crown prince was meddling in other people's affairs. Facing Mo Daotian, Ye Feng declared that it seemed he would now eliminate him once and for all. Terrified, Mo Daotian hid behind Feng Wanqing and said he was only there to protect Su Chang's disciple, begging Ye Feng not to act recklessly. He added that if Feng Wanqing were to get hurt, Master Su would not let it go unpunished. Ye Feng asked whether Feng Wanqing still hadn't understood the situation. He said that if Su Chang truly cared about her, she wouldn't be in that condition. Furthermore, he claimed that the Sword Cloud sect didn't have the resources to nurture someone like her. With a sad expression, Feng Wanqing asked him to stop lying, as she wouldn't believe any of it. Now with a more irritated and confident look, she declared once again that she refused to go with Ye Feng. The man became irritated by her rejection until a voice emerged, stating that Ye Feng was treating the Sword Cloud sect with great disdain. Feng Wanqing quickly brightened, recognizing her master's voice. Su Chang approached and declared that the sect would not be receiving Ye Feng that day, asking him to leave. The creature stated that if Su Chang truly did not intend to accept the young woman as his disciple, then he should not stand in the way of her rise to greatness. The protagonist stared at the creature for a moment, visibly annoyed, charged his energy, and rushed toward it, preparing an attack. Su Chang declared that a mere weapon fragment dared to rampage around uncontrollably, and then landed a direct blow on the creature. With an extraordinary aura, the protagonist declared that he would make sure to shatter that fragment completely. Su Chang then launched a powerful attack at the creature, but Ye Feng quickly called the fragment back and observed Su Chang in silence. The protagonist once again told Ye Feng to leave, and resentfully, he quickly left the place. Mo Daotian started laughing, calling Ye Feng a weakling and saying it was better for him to leave anyway. Suddenly, the protagonist kicked Mo Daotian and said that the crown prince should do the same. Su Chang then turned, calling out to Feng Wanqing, who quickly approached. The protagonist simply told her to leave with him, and Feng followed him, running. Some time passed, and night fell over the city of demon hunters. The leader of the Sword Cloud sect, Jian Tian King, was flying through the area while being pursued. Several ninjas leaped toward Jian Tian King, who faced his pursuers head-on, until, suddenly, a massive explosion occurred. Some time later, the young master of the demon hunter sect was seated on his throne, when someone informed him that the leader of the Sword Cloud sect had been eliminated. Wei Kun, with a wicked look in his eyes, said that this was very good. He turned to a hooded man standing behind him and stated that, now that the Sword Cloud sect was leaderless, it would suffer a blow, and no one would be able to stop their plans. The mysterious man remarked that it had been a very ingenious plan. Wei Kun ordered the news to be spread, and declared that in 3 days, the secret realm of the Northern Heaven would open under the banner of the Demon Hunters Alliance. At that time, all prominent disciples from the Northern Heaven region would gather in the city of the Demon Hunters. Once the plan was successfully carried out, the entire northern region would recognize the Demon Hunters Alliance as their leader. At that moment, the soldiers before Wei Kun shouted in unison, agreeing with the words of their leader. The mysterious man, observing the entire scene, thought that those fools were far too easy to deceive. When the imperial princess was resurrected, they would truly experience what fear was, for they were far too weak to even be noticed by the celestial demonic clan. Sometime later, in the conference hall of the Sword Cloud sect, Su Chang and the other elders were gathered. Zhou Yuan stood up, irritated, saying that things had already gone too far. Just because the young master of the Demon Hunters had been humiliated, he retaliated by eliminating the master of the Sword Cloud sect. Bai commented that that fool Wei Kun could never have attacked the master alone. There must be other forces involved behind the scenes. In 3 days, the secret realm of the Northern Heaven would open in the city of Dragon Hunters, and there might be a connection between the two events. Zhao agreed with Bai, saying he had heard that the leader of the Demon Hunters Alliance, Wei Kun's father, had been in seclusion for many years and was close to reaching the Supreme Realm. Perhaps he had secretly left seclusion and was orchestrating everything. Zhao went on to say that, if they dared to eliminate the master, they must have already planned how to deal with the consequences. Zhou Yuan agreed with Zhao and said that this was clearly an attack against them. He then asked the protagonist what they should do. Su Chang, who had been listening in silence until then, stood up and declared that both from a personal and logical standpoint, the master's death must be avenged. Even if the Demon Hunter sect was filled with traps, they needed to act, for if they allowed themselves to be intimidated, they would be playing into the enemy's hands. And at that moment, they could not lose momentum. Su Chang continued, saying that in 3 days, the secret realm of the Northern Heaven would open. Even if it was a trap, it could also represent a great opportunity. Regarding the people of the Demon Hunters sect, the protagonist stated that he would deal with them personally. Zhou Yuan then said they would leave that matter in the protagonist's hands. Zhao commented that they could not be left without a leader, and he nominated Su Chang to assume the position, as the protagonist had the strength and the necessary prestige. Bai agreed, saying that if Su Chang accepted that heavy responsibility, no one would oppose it. Then, the 3 of them bowed to Su Chang as the new leader of the sect. The protagonist thought, at that moment, that the paths of justice and evil had become one. Some time had passed, and the protagonist was already in his dormitory. He believed that the secret realm of the northern sky was the first great opportunity after his rebirth. For all cultivators, it was a place they had to visit. Therefore, the protagonist believed he needed to be fully prepared. So, he took a look at the system's shop and exchanged 10,000 points for 2 supreme golems. After the purchase, the system congratulated the host for the acquisition and explained that, although these golems did not possess cultivation techniques or combat experience, the host would need to take care of them carefully in order to unlock their full potential. Su Chang stated that this would be easy, and then picked up 2 technique books, placing them into the 2 supreme golems, thus transferring the knowledge from the books to them. At that moment, Su Chang thought that, with cultivation and techniques in place, the next step would be to teach real combat experience and skill refinement. He then activated the soul control technique, stood in front of one of the golems, and took over its body. The protagonist, now wearing the supreme armor, called the second golem to accompany him. Somewhere in the center of the continent, a crack appeared in the sky. It was the protagonist passing through with his golem. He positioned himself above the divine sect of the spirit of Miradia, and remarked that causing trouble there wouldn't have much of an impact, since that sect was far from the northern region. However, the local residents, frightened, began to shout that an enemy attack was about to begin. The master of the Miradia sect quickly appeared, asking who dared to invade the territory of his sect with such a threatening aura. He then ordered the enemy to be captured. Su Chang thought he had nothing against those people, but he needed someone to practice combat with. Meanwhile, in the protagonist's dormitory, someone opened the door to his room and saw his sleeping body. It was Zhui Liuli, who entered with a smile, calling out for Elder Su. Returning to the battle scene, the local cultivators were attacking the two golems. The fight was extremely intense, and the protagonist was fiercely battling his enemies. The confrontation was so fierce that the cultivators could barely defend themselves. The soul of the protagonist, which was inside the golem, felt extremely excited by all that extraordinary combat power. The cultivators shouted that this was not good at all, and so the protagonist launched a powerful attack on them, eliminating all of them at once. Some time passed, and the protagonist felt satisfied, for now that he had destroyed an entire sect, his golems had gained experience in real combat. Then, he declared that only one step remained. He flew at high speed, raised his finger, and asked for the ray of Maradia to assist him. A powerful lightning bolt appeared in the sky and struck the two golems directly, and they absorbed the power of the divine lightning. After a while, the soul of the protagonist returned to his body. Shui Liuli was excited that the protagonist had finally returned, and Su Chang commented that he had been solving a problem, but now Liuli was keeping him busy again, and for that, he would have to punish her. Thus, the night became heated in the Sword Cloud sect. 3 days later, in the city of demon hunters, many cultivators began arriving. The members of the Sword Cloud sect also arrived. It was then stated that Wei Kun had attacked the leader of the Sword Cloud sect without any justification. Bai shouted that they would not let Wei Kun get away with it. Wei Kun began to laugh and claimed that the Sword Cloud sect was now performing dishonorable acts without any discretion, questioning how they still had the audacity to interrogate him. Furthermore, Wei Kun pointed at Yaolan and said they were still parading around with a demon. He declared that Jin Tian King and his disciples were conspiring with the demon clan, and that this serpent was proof of it. He then decided to enforce justice in the name of the heavens. Bai, looking at Yaolan and Su Chang, thought that ever since he had taken the position of sect master, that serpent demon who once hid in the mountains felt free to appear. But since Su Chang protected the sect, no one dared to say anything about it. Su Chang told Wei Kun that a clear conscience fears no accusation. He then explained that Miss Yaolin was an old friend and had nothing to do with the immortal Sword Cloud sect. He went on to say that if Wei Kun continued opposing them, then the protagonist would see it through to the end. When the journey to the secret realm ended, Su Chang promised to settle the matter with Wei Kun properly. Wei Kun laughed and said he had been waiting for Su Chang, and that if he hadn't shown up, Wei Kun himself would have gone to him. The protagonist, observing the attitude of the young master of the demon hunters, thought he seemed overly confident, likely because someone powerful was backing him. Wei Kun took the key to the secret realm and asked for the talking to stop. He said he would open the secret realm and that, even though there was a conflict with the Sword Cloud sect, he, as vice leader, would still allow the protagonist and his disciples to participate. Thus, a portal appeared before everyone, granting access to the Northern Heaven secret realm. All the cultivators grew excited at the prospect and rushed quickly toward the portal. The protagonist instructed his companions to move forward. Yao Lan became excited about the potential treasures she might find there, and the protagonist stated that, according to custom, someone had to maintain the stability of the passage, and for that reason, he would stay outside. Meanwhile, Wei Kun commented that there were many people present. The mysterious man seemed pleased with that. Su Chang, observing the two, realized that they were actually members of the Celestial Demon Clan. Wei Kun and this clan were delusional, like a mantis hunting a cicada, but they would not get away with it for long. The protagonist positioned himself before the portal to the secret realm, but along with the cultivators desperately entering it, Su Chang infiltrated using his supreme golems. Some time had passed, and the cultivators had finally found the primordial tower. As the legend said, a legendary weapon had been left there. The cultivators remarked that it was very difficult to subdue the weapon and make it accept someone as its master. Even so, they advanced, eager to fight over who would claim the sword. As they approached the tower, a powerful aura emerged around it, and its chains moved toward the cultivators, preventing them from advancing. The chains drained their energy, and the cultivators cried out that the tower was demonic. One of them even tried to break free from the chains, but it was already too late, for him and the others. At that moment, one of the cultivators noticed someone had just arrived. He asked this figure for help. It was one of the protagonist's golems. The golem replied that the man was beyond saving, so he would send him to a path of peace. With that, he struck the cultivator, granting him rest. Su Cheng then declared that he would now see what this demonic tower really was. The protagonist moved forward toward the tower's chains, kicking and forcing his way through. However, one of the chains managed to wrap around him, coiling around his leg and then his body. Su Cheng thought those iron chains were just inanimate objects, but even with spiritual energy, he couldn't sense any response, and that truly bothered him. He managed to break the chain in front of him and said he had just refined that supreme golem and couldn't let it be destroyed so easily. At that moment, a massive explosion occurred, and the protagonist emerged from the debris with a powerful aura surrounding his golem. Su Cheng asked what kind of demon was sealed in that tower, to force him to use such a technique. Then, a voice emerged from within the smoke, asking the fellow cultivator to reveal himself. A beautiful fox demon appeared, saying it had been a long time, and she had finally found a supreme expert. At that moment, the system triggered a new mission for Su Cheng. The mission instructed him to increase favorability with Yu Linglong to above 80 and to subdue the nine-tailed fox clan. The reward would be 5,000 vision points and 50,000 destiny points. The protagonist thought he had expected this from the system. It never let a beauty go unnoticed. Yu Linglong approached him and asked if he found her beautiful, because if he helped her escape, she would show him something even better to admire. The protagonist replied that he could help her get out, but with one condition, that she would stay for 1 year by the side of his master, Lord Su Cheng. He believed that within a year, he could win over the beautiful little fox. Yu Linglong looked at the golem, slightly annoyed. She thought that she had been trapped there for centuries, and this was the only supreme expert capable of resisting all her attacks. If she didn't accept the proposal, she didn't know how long it would take to get another chance like this. So, even though she didn't like it, she agreed. The protagonist then said everything was settled. He made a hand gesture and invoked a demon-refining technique, the desolate heaven seal of the ancient god. With a single strike, the entire tower shattered into many pieces. Amid the explosion, Yu Linglong felt excited to finally be free. She turned to the protagonist and asked if he was worried she might run away. He answered that he actually wasn't. Since Yu Linglong had been suppressed for so long, her current strength was only half of what it was at her peak. Even if she tried to escape, she would be caught by someone else. It was better for her to follow him and regain her strength. The protagonist then turned and said there were still matters to deal with in the secret realm, calling the fox to come along. Yu Linglong, with an irritated expression, asked him not to give her orders. In her thoughts, she reflected that she had never imagined that she, the queen of the nine-tailed fox clan, would have to humble herself and surrender to someone. Staring at the protagonist's golem, Yu Linglong vowed that one day she would make him kneel before her, and only then would she truly enjoy herself with him. Meanwhile, in another part of the secret realm, Bai, Feng, Wanqing, and Yaolan were following a different path along with a few other cultivators. Bai explained that within the secret realm, there are 10 palace halls among the 9 heavens, and among them, the most renowned is the Hall of the Celestial Mirage. According to legend, deep within it lie divine weapons and secret treasures left behind by a supreme expert. If someone were to obtain even a single inheritance, their path to immortality would know no limits. Yaolan commented that those who trust in their abilities usually choose to go to the Hall of the Celestial Mirage in search of opportunities. Unfortunately, no one had managed to break through the hall's barrier in hundreds of years, so she asked how anyone could just walk in. Bai replied that it obviously wouldn't be easy. If it were, everyone would be going there. Yaolan said one must have dreams if they wish to become someone. Otherwise, what's the difference between you and a salted fish? Just then, someone announced that powerful experts had finally broken through the Celestial Mirage barrier, and that the hall was about to be revealed. If anyone wanted to obtain an inheritance, they had to act quickly. As they approached the hall, the girls were startled by what they saw. Bai remarked that the Demon Hunter Alliance had received such powerful backing this time that they managed to break the Celestial Mirage barrier. It seemed that Wei Kun and the others were determined to succeed. At that moment, cultivators from the Demon Hunter sect were gathering in greater numbers to seize the inheritances within the hall. Feng Wanqing questioned whether there was a conspiracy behind all this. After all, if the demon hunters wanted everything for themselves, why announce it now? Yaolan agreed, and said that even though she was a demon, sometimes the hearts of humans could be even more treacherous. Bai urged them to be more cautious and observe what kind of tricks they might be planning. She then called all the disciples of the Sword Cloud sect, instructing them to breathe silently and proceed discreetly, making sure not to reveal their presence. The disciples quickly obeyed Bai's command. Sometime later, many cultivators had gathered at the Hall of the Celestial Mirage. One of them asked where the entrance to the hall was. Meanwhile, Bai, Yaolan, and Feng Wanqing were hidden in the bushes, observing from a distance. Bai remarked on how many people were there. Yaolan noted that, after the news spread, it was expected that everyone in the secret realm would gather there. After all, the Hall of the Celestial Mirage was the oldest and deepest inheritance site. At that moment, Wei Kun and his secret follower stood before everyone. The mysterious man commented that nearly everyone had arrived. Suddenly, a few men appeared behind the girls who were hiding, and announced that members of the Sword Cloud sect were also present. Bai quickly turned around and shouted that they had been tricked. One of the men threw a large net with talismans tied to it, managing to capture Bai, Yaolan, and Feng Wanqing. A few minutes later, Wei Kun was thanking everyone for coming, saying that the gate to the Hall of the Celestial Mirage could only be opened with the combined strength of all those present. Once the gate opened, all the divine weapons and secret treasures inside would belong to them. The disciples quickly grew excited at the declaration from their young leader. However, a few mysterious figures appeared behind the disciples. With a simple lift of a finger, one of them activated a powerful spell. A large cage materialized around the disciples, who were left confused. The mysterious men cast a spell toward them, demanding that they surrender their strength. At that moment, the disciples' life force began to be absorbed. Wei Kun let out a laugh and said everything was within the plans of the Glaying Demon Alliance. He then addressed everyone, telling them to obediently surrender their energy. Just then, Wei Kun's subordinates arrived with the captured members of the Sword Cloud sect. They said that just as Lord Wei Kun predicted, the girls were hiding and watching, but fortunately they were captured in a single move. Now that they were bound by enchanted ropes, they couldn't use their spiritual energy. Wei Kun approached Bai and remarked that Su Chang was quite the playboy. Bai told him to get away from her. Wei Kun then moved toward Yaolan, saying that even that demon had caught Su Chang's attention. He added that he'd love to experience that as well. When he tried to get closer to Feng Wanqing, she shouted for him to shut up, saying she would not let him insult her master. Wei Kun told her not to be in such a hurry. Once their spiritual energy ran dry, he would give them a love potion, and then the four of them would have fun together. By then she wouldn't even remember who Su Chang was. Bai warned that if Wei Kun dared to touch her, the Bai family would never let him get away with it. Yaolan demanded to be released and challenged him to a one-on-one fight. Wei Kun laughed and said that soon his father would become the supreme powerhouse of the Northern Heaven region. At that point, the three great families would have to bow before them. He then reached toward Bai, ready to grab her, when suddenly an attack struck his hand. The girls grew hopeful, saying someone had come to rescue them. Yu Linglong commented that so this was what the protagonist needed to handle, adding that she wanted to make it clear she had nothing to do with it. The protagonist replied that it was fine. Wei Kun, furious, ordered his men to seize the protagonist, but a powerful aura burst from the golem's body, stopping them in their tracks. The protagonist then told everyone to stay right there and enjoy his performance. One of the men managed to reach the golem and attacked it with a sword. The others in the rear also prepared to strike, but with a powerful explosion the protagonist repelled all the men around him. The disciples who were trapped inside the cage began to cheer and thank the golem for saving them. Wei Kun asked the mysterious man what they should do now. The mysterious man replied that he was fully aware of the Demon Hunters Alliance's capabilities, and had never intended to rely on Wei Kun or his disciples. He then summoned 3 great guardians and ordered them to attack. 3 masked figures appeared on the battlefield. Bai was startled to see 3 supreme experts there, and commented that it was no wonder they had managed to create such a large formation. They had likely been hiding those 3 all along. But the protagonist wasted no time and charged toward them, declaring that it was a shame they had dared to oppose him. because now there was no turning back. At that moment, the white-haired guardian activated an ice shield to defend himself from the protagonist's blow, but the golem broke the shield with a single strike. The protagonist stated that, in the face of absolute power, all efforts were useless. The other two guardians joined hands and used the half-step Supreme Spirit fusion technique. A skull-shaped figure appeared around them. Seeing that they had summoned a powerful spirit, the protagonist wasn't about to fall behind. He declared that he could do the same, and summoned a massive flaming beast behind him. The flames were so intense that they engulfed both guardians. Wanqing was terrified as he watched the scene unfold before his eyes. The protagonist then approached him and seized the young master of the demon hunters. Wanqing warned him not to do anything reckless, saying his father would soon leave seclusion, and once he did, he would reach the supreme realm. No one would be able to challenge him. But the protagonist didn't let him off this time, and eliminated the young master of the demon hunters sect. At that moment, the barrier surrounding the palace began to shatter. The disciples celebrated, finally free. The disciples of the Sword Cloud sect thanked the golem, unaware that their master himself was inside it. The golem said that their master had entrusted him with leading them into the hall of the celestial mirage. Feng Wanqing asked if the reverend was a friend of her master, and the golem replied that he was, while Yaolan chuckled quietly. The golem then turned to Bai and said that her master had ordered Elder Bai to guide the disciples out of that place, as it was not suitable to stay there for long, and they should seek new opportunities. The protagonist then turned to the fox, and Yu Linglong admitted that, with her current abilities, she would not be able to escape. She asked if she should wait for him there. The protagonist quickly left and replied that at least Yu Linglong knew what was good for her. He then began opening portals to the other halls of the Celestial Mirage Palace. With his hands, he tore through the protective barriers, opening a rift in the sky. He turned to the disciples and said that, according to legend, the Celestial Mirage Palace was in constant flux, its space perpetually shifting, and he couldn't guarantee everyone's absolute safety. He told them that whether they found fortune or misfortune would depend solely on their own luck. At that moment, a powerful energy began to flow from the gate, and someone said that the rift had begun to shift. The energy emanating from the rift enveloped Feng Wanqing's body and started pulling her somewhere. The protagonist told her not to be afraid and to protect herself well, for the course of destiny would guide her. A few minutes later, Feng Wanqing appeared in one of the palace's halls. Yaolan had also passed through a gate and arrived at her chosen hall, where she wanted to be close to the skeleton of the demon god. Meanwhile, the protagonist had arrived at the Crystal Palace, in the tomb of the Divine Queen. Upon stepping into the protective barrier of the place, Su Chang's soul left the body of the Supreme Golem, and the empty body collapsed to the ground. At that moment, the protagonist wondered if only spiritual bodies could pass through that barrier. Just then, an intense light emanated from the tomb of the Divine Queen. When Su Chang looked into the crystal tomb, he saw a beautiful woman lying there, her expression serene, as if she were peacefully sleeping. Su Chang was enchanted by her beauty, and thought that this woman had a celestial appearance, the demeanor of an immortal. It was truly astonishing. But then, something caught his attention, something he believed to be an anomaly. At that moment, an old man appeared before Su Chang and said, "Your Highness has finally arrived," referring to the protagonist as the king. The old man continued, saying he had waited 1,000 years for the king, and had finally seen him. The old man turned to the sleeping woman and said that the queen had been in an eternal slumber for 1,000 years, waiting for the king. Su Chang thought the old man must be confusing him with someone else, as nothing in his memories suggested any of this. The old man then asked the king for permission to open the queen's celestial coffin. He struck the crystal lid with his old staff and declared that the king and queen had been apart for over 1,000 years, and it was time for their reunion. After that, the beautiful woman was fully exposed among the ruins of her crystal bed. The old man, having used his last breath of energy, explained that the final remnant of his soul had guarded the Crystal Palace for 1,000 years, awaiting the reunion of the Divine King and Divine Queen. He finished by saying he regretted nothing, not even his death. At that moment, the Queen slowly opened her eyes. She turned toward the protagonist and called him husband. She lifted her hand slightly, smiling, and said that her beloved Luo had finally appeared, and she could see him once again. Chang, for a moment, felt a deep sadness over the situation and remained silent until he realized this was not good. The millennial seal had been broken, the spiritual energy of the place had been depleted, and the inner hall of the palace could no longer hold. The girl was moved as she thought of her beloved husband. The protagonist told her that Luo was waiting for her outside. Then Chang turned and began to question what exactly was happening. He sensed a strong formation of negative energy, and there was a trace of Yaolan's presence. She was in danger. Chang decided to return to the golem's body and quickly stood up. Meanwhile, Yaolan was standing before the skeleton of the demon god, which was about to attack her. But Chang managed to break through the dimensional walls and appeared before Yaolan and the demon god. Using only 2 fingers, Chang activated a powerful technique and unleashed a wave of flames toward the skeleton. The protagonist jumped in front of Yaolan to shield her and asked if she was all right. Yaolan stepped closer and said she knew it was Chang pretending to be someone else. The protagonist replied that he had once promised he would always be there for her, and no matter what, he would keep that promise. Yaolan sighed and said their conversation was getting too sweet. She then leapt at the demon god, thanked the protagonist for his help, and landed a direct blow on the skeleton, saying that she would finish this last step with her own hands. Yaolan's strike was so powerful that it smashed the skeleton into the ground, shattering everything around it. She pulled out a glowing sphere from the center of the demon god's bones and claimed it as her own. Chang, watching, thought she was truly worthy of standing by his side. Yaolan raised the sphere high above her head, and a strong energy emanated from it. Suddenly, 2 serpent heads emerged near her, and she looked proudly at her new pets. She walked up to Chang and thanked him for his help. Meanwhile, in another hall, Feng Wanqing was alone, surrounded by the spirit of a fire phoenix. The flaming spirit began to dissolve and formed a symbol on her forehead. Then, the phoenix spirit merged with Feng Wanqing's body. After the process, she opened her eyes and realized she was inside the celestial demon palace. A man appeared before her, seated on the throne, and declared that she was truly worthy of inheriting the body of the 9 Nether Phoenix Emperor. He finished by saying that Feng was the only woman who could satisfy him. We'll continue in the next episode. For more videos like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. See you next time.